Hello Stella enthusiasts, and welcome to putting together the Stella 1.2 remote sensing module. The tools you'll need to do so are as follows: wire strippers, snips, a breadboard, solder iron, multimeter, hobby knife, marker, tape, flux, needle nose, pliers, and a soldering braid. 3D parts you'll need. You'll need your remote sensing plug-in module, your cuvette holder, retainer that is, your spectral sensor breakout, your thermal spacer, and of course your end cap. Okay, you're going to knock out that a bit of those breakaway pieces there, some tabs. Okay, and then you got those nice pliable tabs in there that you can insert and hold things, and there's your cuvette that you can pop into the cuvette retainer. Okay, make sure that you print out the base plug in black. That's for spectral reasons. Parts you'll need. You'll need your half-sized proto board, okay, your thermal sensor, your QT breakout, your triad sensor, your air temperature breakout, your QuickTime Connect. You need your coupler pins, 3-pin and 4-pin, okay, and your LiDAR sensor. All right, now we're going to cut the traces. All right, so I'm going to make a nice little mark here to cut the traces and make sure I'm at A30. And so I might do that a little off screen. There we go. Pop it right in the corner there. Make sure that it's A30. Make sure it's correct. Okay, line it all up, and then I'll begin my cutting. Let me grab my hobby knife here, my utility knife, and do a nice little cut there, and make sure I dig out a little segment of that proto board. Okay, and I'm going to cut the traces between 30AB, 30BC, 30CD, 30HI, and 30IJ. Alright, and I had to go change out some filaments in my 3D printer, and everything is looking good, so let's continue cutting. Alright. Make sure that you get some good notches in there, and you might want to grab your multimeter after this and give it a test to make sure that there's no continuity between them. So yeah, let's take out that multimeter there, put it on our beep. I always like to tap to make sure that I'm on the right setting, and let's go ahead and check the continuity here. If it doesn't beep, that means there's no continuity and we have severed the traces successfully. I also like to check the back traces just in case in case I might have severed them by accident. Always just worth a check, you know. Always find these little bridges or little mistakes, little things that might be cut sometimes. It's a lot of fun. So now we're going to use our coupler aligner, okay, that we printed out in 3D on our 3D printer, and we're going to align our coupler pins, okay, our magnetic coupler pins, using this alignment. Okay. And once I get the thing in there, I don't know, for some reason the 3-pin one always gives me just a little bit of trouble putting in. Once I get it put in there and I feel like it's stable and all that, grab some tape and we'll tape it all up, and maybe do a little bit of that off camera here. Alright, let's see, let's get that down. There we go. And I try to leave the pins exposed so that I can go ahead and solder it pretty easily. Okay, I use my tape there. No. There we go. A little bit more stable. It was giving me a little trouble. So let's get back to it. All right. And we're going to cut our length of wire here, and you're going to put them in the same hole that the what the pins are in. Okay, so you gotta sort of squeeze the wire in there. It's kind of fun. And I like to leave some extra length with the wire. That way I can trim it as needed. And so I'll stick it in. So the ground goes into A30. So black wire into A30, red wire into B30. Okay, that's going to be your power. It's the red. Okay, ground the black. Okay, then we're going to put our serial clock wire, our green wire, and that's going to go into C30. Let's strip that off there. All right, let's prepare. All right, and again, sometimes it doesn't want to fit in quite so easily, so, you know, and then make sure once it's in, you bend the wires underneath and all that so it stays put. Okay. Let's get our white wire, our serial data, our I2C serial data wire here. And we're going to pop that in. Okay. Now for that one, you can put it right into E30 to D30. Okay. There should be a trace still left there. Or you could pop it right into D30. Okay. And I like to get these soldered in the back here first, you know, keep them a little bit separated, the wires, so that you're not, you know, bridging anything. Okay, put a little flux. A little flux on the other pins as well. Okay. Now we might not be using the other 3 coupler pins on there, but they help for stability and all that, and you never know, maybe in the future breakout board, or maybe even on this board we can expand with some different sensors. So it's worth doing. So go ahead and solder those in because they don't have anything. Alright, and let's go ahead and solder in our couplers, our coupler, 4-pin coupler with the wire. Okay. And again, try to avoid bridging anything, and you did sever it, and so sever those connections, but it's always worth checking. There we go. Divide up that solder. Sometimes it just gets on there. To be a little bit obnoxious. Let me go ahead and clean off the solder iron here. There we go. Let's go ahead and clean up our board. Okay. Pop that on out. Okay. One more. Just make sure it's nice in there and taut. I don't want any wire exposed. I'm going to go ahead and solder that on up just to make sure that there's a nice bridge there. Good continuity. Alright. Alright. Now I'm just checking the solders, making sure there's no bridging and all that. So there was a little bit of solder that as you saw was bridging just a little bit, so I'm just cleaning that little area up real quick. Getting a little more leverage over it, so it's slightly off camera. There we go. Now let's check the continuity in. Let's use our multimeter. Do the beep test. I gotta be sure. Hopefully that did it. Check it again. Alright. Things seem to be looking good. Feeling pretty good. Cool. Alright. Now I stripped off the tape here. Get the couplers in here. Got some extra length of wire. Now, let's see. So we're going to go ahead and pop our ground on here and trim that wire down, the black wire. Okay, so that's going to go from Going A30 to the ground below A30. Okay, so I make it nice and short, and I use my needle nose pliers, pull it on through, tighten it on up a bit. It's okay if there's a little bit of a loop. Now we're going to do our our power wire, our red from B30 to A30 to the positive below A30. Okay, pop it on that bus there. All right, and let's see. We're going to do the white wire here first. We're going to go to the so the serial data to the positive above J30. Okay. That's our serial data trace there, and then go ahead and measure out for our serial clock, okay, which is going to go to the negative above J30. Alright, so let's pop that on in here. Sometimes wires just don't want to behave. We leave a little bit of slack, not a ton, but just a little bit, just in case I have to move it out of the way. But this is a fun little build here. They're all pretty fun builds. Let's pop that on in there. Bend the wires, make sure it's all set and good. All right. Use our nice mount here. A little flux. And let's solder them on in. Ooh. There we go. Burning a little bit of flux. You can see that. I need to clean off my solder iron here. Yeah, there we go. Now let's clean up our board. Every time you put that solder iron down, you make sure you clean it. Every time I pick it up, I make sure I clean it. And try and clean it in between. You know, you don't want a gunky solder iron. Alright, and this is what the coupler should look like after you finished wiring it all up. Okay, now we're going to install the QT breakout, and we're going to put in the headers. Let's prepare those headers. It's a nice little piece. Okay, and it's going to go from E27 to E24. Okay, and we're going to put the quick connect, and it's going to face towards J. And we'll tape up those headers first there. Put a little flux. There we go. And there we go. Get those outside too. Okay, see if I need to make adjustments after I peel the tape off. Make sure it's laying flat. If it's good, looking good, it's pretty and it's straight and all that, I'll go ahead and solder the rest of these header pins on. All right. Clean it up. Make sure I get it over the trash can when I clean it up. There you go. There's where the header pins should be. About what it should look like. All right, let's put our QT connect on there. Okay, and I like to use a little bit of extra header pin and just pop it under there as a brace. Flux it on up. Get the outside ones. And again, I might take a look, see if it's straight, see if it's looking good. If it's flush, and then finish it on up. Okay, there we go. Looking pretty good. Alright, and remember it's facing towards J when you install those header pins. I'm sorry, when you install the quick connect. Now you're going to install the breakout with the QT wiring. Now I'm using the sensor spacer to check to make sure that the wire is going to go around the sensor spacer. Okay. So give it enough slack, get the ground there, okay, and we are going to go from D25 to the ground below A27. Okay, so I'm going to give it a nice little bend. Okay, and check the spacer again, make sure it's not going to interfere with the spacer. Go ahead and pop in the power wire. Okay, and that's going to go in from D24 to below A28, the positive below A28. Okay. Strip that wire. Make sure it's got a nice little bend into it. Tuck it on in. Check our spacer. Alright. Now we're going to get our nice serial clock wire going on here. Okay, and it's going to go up and around. Alright, we'll measure it out. Okay, and it is going from D26 to the negative above J27. Can put in a nice bend into it, going on the side of the couplers as opposed to near the to the other side of the QuickTime sensor, because we want to keep it away from the spacer so the spacer has space. Okay, and then we're going to put our serial data line, white wire, from D27 to the positive above J28. Okay. Make sure the wires are nice and tucked in there, that there's a nice little fold on them. They're not going to get loose and fall out. And we're going to solder them down. Flux, 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 flux. And solder, solder, solder. Pop these on down. Looking good. Clean our board. Okay, and your board should look something like this once you got the QTE all installed. Alright, next on to installing the thermal sensor. One of my favorites. Make sure you use the little plastics, the spacer that you printed out. Okay, when you're installing the thermal sensor. So let me go ahead and grab my thermal sensor here. There we go, there's a thermal. Alright, there's the little tab. So there's a little tab that's on there on the thermal sensor itself, and you want to make sure and point that. Okay, there you go. Point that tab towards the QT sensor. Alright, we're going to wedgie those on in there. There we go. Straighten those up a little bit. Alright, and when we place our thermal sensor there, it's going to go F19, F20, E19, and E20. Okay, so you make sure you get them on there. Make sure you hold that down pretty straight, and again, make sure that tab is pointed towards the QT. Alright, so I bet the wires there. Okay, fluxing them on up. Clean off my iron here. Okay, we'll get 2 wires to start. Make sure everything's looking good. Make sure it's sitting flush. Make sure it's, yeah. Okay, make sure the tab is the correct way. Again, facing towards the QT sensor. Okay. ahead and clean it up. Alright, now let's go ahead and let's get starting on the wiring of the thermal sensor here. First we're going to take our look at our spacer there. So that's about how our spacer is going to sit. So we want to make sure that, again, we have enough room, nothing's in the way. Alright, let's get our ground wire going on here. Okay. And our ground for the thermal is going to go from D20 to the negative below A26. And again, we want to wrap it around. So I make a nice little L in there, give it some good slack, and then I strip it off and pop it in. Okay. That was D20 to the negative below A26. Then we'll get our power wire D19 to the positive below A27. Again, nice little bend there. Nice reminder to use the sensor spacer to check for that you've given it enough slack that it's not going to interfere. Alright, let's go ahead and install our serial clock wire, okay, and that is going to be D20 to the negative above J20. Alright, get these wires flattened out. Now we're going to install our serial data line, our white wire, from J19 to the positive above J19. So this side's a little easier. It doesn't have much in the way of a spacer to get in the way. Lock it on down. Yeah. I trim the white wire just a little bit. There we go. Alright. Flux it on up. Solder it on in. There's a little bead of solder there. Again, trying to make little volcanoes. Okay, clean up our board. Everything's looking pretty good. Spacer's fitting nicely. Now let's see what we're doing next here. Okay. Now, I'm going to identify the area because we're going to cut some traces in the back here. So I'm going to use a little bit of wire, something that'll fit through there, and make sure that I cut on the rear the negative above in between J12 and J13, and the positive below in between A12 and A13. Okay, just like we did with the other the other coupler cutting, we're going to do the same thing here. We're cutting these traces. It's just going to be a little bit below. Okay, so I put a little wire there as my marker. Alright, so I know exactly where I need to cut. Make sure we take out a good notch. Nice little segment there. These are a bit thicker traces, so make sure you got it done well. Now, of course, you know by now that we're going to be testing it out with our multimeter. Make sure that there's nothing between No continuity. All right. Now we're going to get the spectrometer and the LiDAR sort of set up, and there you go on the spacer. Let's test our continuity first. Make sure it's, there we go. All right. Cool. Make sure everything else has continuity that it didn't. Yeah, always just worth checking. Just a quick check. Might as well. While you got it on, to make sure that there's no bridging going on. Now use a sensor spacer to check the wire slack. Again, always worth checking. There we go. If we can just grab the sensor spacer. No, there. Okay. There we go. Now we're going to get the LiDAR out of our packet. Alright, let's get the triad out here. Here's the triad spectral sensor. Alright. Placing it in the spacer package, but it's actually upside down. So now we got it the correct way. So we want the, you see, if you notice, the two sensors facing down and away from the LiDAR sensor that we just put in there. And the LiDAR sensor goes in there and it just clips right in there. Now we're going to take off there's a little piece of film right on the top of the LiDAR sensor. Be careful not to touch it. And this is how you position the triad sensor in the spacers here. Alright, once we have that on, now we get to strap it on in. Okay, and measuring these out, and you want about 45 millimeters or so approximately of sheath wire. Okay, and the rest, the ends of them stripped. Okay, so that's not total length, that's just the sheath portion of the wire. Okay, I put a little extra length in the stripped portion of the wire, so that way I pin this down correctly, and you'll see exactly what I mean in just a moment. Okay, and you'll see why we stripped the traces, because it is going to go from one bus to the other, and if there was any power going through there, we'd have lots of issues. So this strapping down is a structural implementation of soldering. Okay, make sure it's nice and taut. So I'm going to use my needle nose pliers. Okay, so we don't want this going anywhere. Gonna do the same thing on the other side. So, again, genius build. It's so much fun. Just, all the thought that goes into it, and you can just see, the genius behind it that Paul Morrell did, creating these. Alright, so got those nice and taut, strapped in pretty well, feel pretty good about it. Let's see, take another quick look, make sure it's really in there. Okay, yeah, make sure it notched it well. There we go. Test it again just to make sure. Okay. Get it in a relative steady position there. Flux it on up. And when you're ready, start soldering it on in. You know why it's so satisfying soldering the things in? Very relaxing, very zen when I do that. There you go. And that should be strapped in pretty well. Alright. That's how it should look once you have everything strapped in. Now we're going to connect these things up here. Now remember, with the quick connects, you put the shiny side down, so the exposed wire down, and I'm using one of the tire quick connects ones. I believe this is like a 25mm quick connect cord or cable. And again, be careful, because you really don't want to touch the LiDAR. You can always peel the LiDAR off later if you want to. Just make sure that you do before you start snapping it into the thing. Okay, so now we have that connected, and we have a few other sensors to connect with the quick connect. So we're going to come out of the LiDAR. Alright, and now we're going to go to our nice air temperature module. Okay, and we're going to connect that to our triad. And remember, again, exposed shiny side down towards the board, or the breakout. Okay, once you have it in, it should be pretty good, and you sort of put a nice little bend into the wire there. Okay, and now we're going to put it all together, and we're going to sleeve it inside of our 3D printed. Okay, so this is our 3D printed house. Okay, we're going to make sure we slide it in nice and neatly, and this chip again has a little pocket on the side there that you can slide it in. Okay, because again, this is just a genius little build there. So it's got a pocket for some extra sensors in case we want to expand. Okay, I'm gonna rearrange it just a little bit. There we go. It feels like it's good. Just slide it on there, nice and tucked in. Okay, make sure the wires are tucked, to make sure they're not, over any of the viewing sensors. Okay, and once we have that on, we're going to slide in our end cap, okay, and lock it in position. Okay, it's being a little, that's right, the tab is still on there, so you're not going to be able to get it in there until you get the tabs off. Okay, we have the little breakaway tab that I took off. Okay, not the snap tab, but there's on the snap tab, there's a little piece that just you break off to get it in there. There we go. Snap it, snap it. Now we can slide it on in. Okay, now we have a complete package. There we go. Cuvette, everything. So there we go. And that's how you put your Stella remote sensing package together, and your cuvette holder for some liquid spectroscopy. Slide it right on in there. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you have a good time building the Stella remote sensing module for the Stella 1.2.